I've read and watched over 1,000 hours of psychology content and understood that the big thing that was holding me back in terms of my success in entrepreneurship and as a Muslim was my identity. So inshallah, I'm going to be showing you how to completely shift your identity, to sacrifice your old self so you can achieve your goals and completely recreate yourself so that every goal that you set for 2025 or 2026, whenever you're watching this, you'll be able to achieve, inshallah. First of all, we're going to start off by actually defining what identity is. So identity, to put it simply, is your self-concept. It's the conception, the way you see yourself. Okay. So why is this so important? Because your actions are going to be within that self-concept. But how? Well, your self-concept is what creates your intentions, which, as Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, that we'll be judged on a lot of our intentions, but our actions and their benefits come from our intentions as well. So intentions and the things that motivate us. But again, why is this actually so important? Well, the intentions that you have and the things that motivate you will mean that when you take the actions will, one, be easier, right? They'll be easy. And two, you'll continue to do them even through hardship. So even if something was genuinely really, really hard, if you identified yourself and within that self-concept, there were certain intentions and motivations to continue doing that action, then the action itself would be easy. It would be easier to continue. And I'll be giving you, inshallah, examples when it comes to that. But the whole point of the video, like I said, is to kill your old self, to recreate your new self. And the first thing to do when it comes to that is to understand this principle. This is something you'll also hear a lot in the manifestation space, by the way, which I think is a fantastic concept to go forward. There's a lovely quote, which I like a lot, which is, man, don't worry, if you're a woman watching this, it's not just men. I'm talking about man as in human. Man with no vision of the future is man that relives the past. Meaning that if you don't have a vision of the future, if you don't have an identity you want to achieve in the future, you will end up reliving the identity you have of the past. And this is incredibly important because you end up realizing that by you holding on to the past, you end up reliving the same life again and again and again. You have a self-fulfilling prophecy where every single day you live as if it was yesterday. Every failure that you had the day before, you end up reliving today and tomorrow. The really important thing on this, by the way, which I think is really cool for you to remember, is that 90% of our thoughts every single day get repeated. The same thoughts that you had yesterday, 90% of them are going to be the ones that you have today. And tomorrow are going to be 90% of the thoughts that you had today as well. So our thoughts, they don't change over a long enough period of time. So with 90% of our thoughts not changing very quickly, it means that we end up living the exact same life that we lived the day before. Again, if you have no vision of the future, you end up reliving the past. For me, this happened to me when I started my entrepreneurial journey. I saw myself as a student. So my past was being a student. And what being a student for me meant, it had so many different meanings. But most importantly was that it wasn't being an entrepreneur. So it doesn't matter what I saw myself in the past, I didn't see myself as the person I wanted to be. I didn't see myself as an entrepreneur. And the incredible thing about this was that I found it incredibly hard to do the work I needed to do. Incredibly hard. I'll give you an example. When it comes to outreach, I find it very hard to do the outreach. But why is that? Well, with outreach, you're the one who sets yourself the goal. You're the one who sets yourself the task. With my identity of being a student, I had my own, with the identity of being a student, I had a boss, right? A teacher that would give me homework. I had somebody that would tell me what to do every single day. And now that I was trying to be an entrepreneur, I had to tell myself what to do. I had to become my own boss. And again, this was incredibly difficult because I didn't see myself as an entrepreneur. I didn't see myself as being an entrepreneur. And when we come back to the self-concept of being a student, not an entrepreneur, my intentions to make money, to be an entrepreneur, to retire my family, they weren't there. My intentions were stuck in terms of being a student. My motivations, although my motivations, I was, like I said, motivated to retire my parents, make money that will, inshallah, benefit the Ummah and that would please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, my actions for doing those things were harder rather than easier. And it was very hard for me to be consistent and to continue because I kept looking backwards instead of forward. And I need you to realize that for you to succeed in life, for you to, inshallah, achieve the goals you want to achieve, the most important thing you can do is completely forget, completely let go of this notion of who you were before. I want you to only, I'm going to draw it in purple right here, only ever look forward. So no matter what failures you had in the past, and for me, for example, it'd be failures of inconsistency. I wouldn't outreach and then I'll feel incredibly upset that I didn't outreach. And every day I'd be like, well, Fedi, you didn't outreach yesterday. What makes you think you're going to outreach today? I didn't close my first sales call, right? It took me ages to get my first client. So every day I had a bunch of failures behind me. But I learned and I realized that by looking forward, none of those failures mean anything. They don't matter anymore. Because now I'm just looking forward. So I'm looking on who I want to become. Now I'm sacrificing my old self. I'm sacrificing my old failures. I'm sacrificing the emotions I had when I did fail, working towards becoming the person I want to become. The first thing you have to do in this stage is just to let go of the past. Understand that who you were does not matter anymore. It doesn't matter who you were or who you think you were. Because if you keep looking backwards, if you keep thinking, this is the person that I usually am, I've never been an entrepreneur, I've always been a student, I've never been this person, I've never been. This is a phrase I just despise completely. I've never been. It's almost like you're making it sound unnatural to become, right? I've never been. Well, guess what? You can be. You can become. If you stop looking backward and you only look forward, you can become whoever you want to be. You can do whatever you want to do. You can achieve anything in life that you want to achieve. So it's incredibly important for you to realize that. For me, by holding myself and seeing myself as a student and not seeing myself as an entrepreneur, the actions I wanted to take were harder. They were harder for me to continue doing them. And why? It's because my intentions weren't aligned with being an entrepreneur, because my self-concept, the way I saw myself, was someone who wasn't an entrepreneur. So the second thing when it comes to this is understanding that your actions are always going to align with your identity. And it's to do with this thing in psychology called cognitive dissonance. So how I describe cognitive dissonance is this thing, it's like an internal struggle. The reason you feel uncomfortable, right? The reason you feel scared when you're thinking about challenges, when you're thinking about your future, when you're thinking about the work that you have to do, the reason you feel scared and the reason that you fall into denial about money being something you can use. Oh, no, money's not necessary. I hate money, but money. Or not even just that, success. Who needs success, right? Hifth, why would I need to memorize the whole Quran? I can be close to Allah without memorizing the whole Quran. You start denying your potential. You fear your potential as well, which is why it generally feels physically uncomfortable for you to do something like outreach for your business. Because you fear it. It makes you uncomfortable. And all of this is due to cognitive dissonance. And why do you have cognitive dissonance? Well, it's because the actions you are trying to take up here, okay, so the actions, the intentions, which I'm going to say is IN, and your actions, which I'm going to put as AC, they don't align with each other. They're conflicting with each other continuously. And that's why you get this feeling of fear, discomfort, and denial. It's because you've created, with your identity, this internal struggle. It's almost like you're going against the wave, right? An internal struggle in your mind. And the mind is trying to save as many calories as possible, by the way. The mind tries to be as efficient as possible because the brain eats up a lot of calories. So it literally goes to the easy thing to do. And what's the easy thing to do? The thing that you're comfortable with. The thing that you aren't scared of, right? The thing that keeps you happy. The thing that you don't have to deny. You can be like, oh yeah, you know what? Oh, like I haven't done Hifth. Why haven't you not done Hifth? Oh, what's the point in doing Hifth? Oh, I haven't made 10K per month. Oh, money's evil. Oh, if I had money, I'd be an evil person. Oh yeah, it would take me further away from Allah. Yeah, money, it takes you further away from Allah. Oh, why haven't you not outreached? Oh, I'm scared I'll be rejected. All of these things, obviously forms of resistance, if you know what that means, right? Resistance, again, in terms of cognitive dissonance. All of these forms of resistance, they're because your intentions, your identity, and your actions aren't aligned. Remember, your identity is the self-concept, the vision, like the way you see yourself, which dictates your intentions and your motivations, which then dictate your actions, whether or not you find them easy, and whether or not you find them easy to continue when things are difficult. Which brings me back to another story I have of myself. When I got rejected on my first sales call, and I also got rejected a lot on cold calling, I would feel incredibly uncomfortable and I'd be scared, obviously, right, because of those things. But the most important thing that came to them is that because I didn't identify myself as an entrepreneur, those rejections were very, very hard to deal with. Very, very hard to deal with. And that's something I had to be honest with myself, is because the way I saw myself was someone who was trying their hardest to make money but wasn't succeeding. I kept looking back, right? I kept looking at my past failures. Oh, I've made no money yet, so why should I see myself as an entrepreneur? I've made no money yet. Obviously, if I kept looking back, I was never going to make money. So for me, it was understanding the fact that because I didn't identify as an entrepreneur, every time I got a no, it was harder for me to continue with my business. Whereas I saw other people in the same programs I was in, paying the same amount of money as me, having the same access to the same exact information, and I saw them be making 1K, 10K per month, and I was still there at zero. This person would make it in a week, and after 3 months of being in the program, I'd have nothing. Then I asked myself, generally, why is this happening? Why is this happening? Why am I at zero? Why have I still not got anything that I wanted to have? Well, it's because this person came in with an identity that I didn't have. So I don't want you to feel like you're behind. I don't want you to feel like something in your life is missing. Because at the end of the day, the goals that we achieve, we don't achieve the goal itself. We achieve an identity. We become capable of achieving that goal. And the last thing I kind of want to show you today, which I think is very important as well, is this idea of consistency, which is throughout this entire journey that you're going through, the most important thing you can probably do is try and back up your identity. And when I say back up your identity, what I mean by that is you use the AAA framework. The AAA framework, I haven't seen anybody talk about it, so I'm going to say it's mine. But the AAA framework is to associate, assume, act, associate, right? So assume your identity to be true. Act as if the identity is true, and then associate your action with the identity, okay? The reason I've made it like this as well is because if you know how kind of cause and effect works in terms of beliefs and how the mind works, right? So you have a belief, okay? So I'm going to draw as a B. You have a belief. That belief then creates an action, right? That action then creates a result, and that result will either back up your belief or create a new one. But most of the time, because your action is in correlation with your belief, this action creates a certain result that ends up backing up your belief. So most of the time, let's just say 1% of the time, does a new belief actually get created. 99% of the time, you have your current beliefs reinstated to yourself, right? You remind yourself of the current beliefs that you have. The reason I put that there is for you to understand that I want you to strongly, and I mean strongly, assume your new identity to be true. Act as if it's true. And then you don't associate a result. So I didn't like the fact that I had to get a result. I was like, well, why can't I just cut off the result part and just suddenly make my action backing up my belief? Because if someone, let's say, believed $1 million in their bank account was possible, they believed they could make $1 million in their bank account, surely they would take the action that would make that thing potentially true. But the person that didn't believe it would never take the action. So surely taking the action is sufficient, right? Sufficient results to prove the belief to be true. I was like, okay, cool. Well, what do? You assume your identity to be true. You act as if your identity is true. Then you associate your action with the belief itself, with the identity itself. And this allowed me to be a lot more consistent because it stopped being about the result. It started being about the action. I only focused on the action. I got the action as the proof of my capacity. And by the action being the main thing I had to do, assume, act, associate. It's very easy. It took away a lot of pressure that I had for myself to try and achieve my goals. Because remember, identity, self-concept that you had, so my intentions, right, and my motivations, I assumed a certain self-concept. These came automatically with my assumption. And therefore my action, I acted as if this complete assumption was true. And therefore I was like, cool, this is the result. The fact that I did the action, I found it slightly easier today than I found it yesterday. The fact that I've continued the action. And therefore, once you're consistent, let's say for a week straight, let's say for 7 days, you're consistent. That's proof. That's a result that you can use to prove to yourself that you are capable and therefore prove your identity to be true. So if I was going to round this all up for you, because I want to make this as actionable as possible. I remember speaking to a brother and he was feeling behind in the program, the mentorship that me and my business partner have. And I was asking him what was kind of the main thing that was holding him back. And he was telling me, well, Fedi, to be honest with you, I'm not a good communicator. I don't think I'm going to be good in business either. I think business is very, very hard. I was like, I won't say his name. I was like, yeah, do you know what, Echi? You're right. Like, what do you mean? And I was like, you're right. Business is going to be hard. You're not a good communicator. And he cut me off. He was like, well, what do you mean I'm right? I was like, well, Echi, I can't tell you you're wrong. You know that. You've worked with me long enough to know that. You know whatever you say to be true in your mind will end up being true. So what do you want me to tell you? He's like, well, I want you to tell me not to give up. And I was like, well, do you believe that if you don't give up, you'll succeed? He was like, yeah, I do. I was like, then identify with somebody who doesn't give up. And alhamdulillah, this brother ended up becoming one of the most successful mentees that me and Muhammad have. He's doing very, very well for himself now, alhamdulillah. But every time an issue comes up in his life, I always ask him, what do you identify with? What do you see yourself as? Because that's the question that ends up fixing the root problem in itself. And again, I get to speak, alhamdulillah, to loads and loads of Muslim entrepreneurs, some of them making a lot of money, some of them just beginning, and helping them, all of them get to 10K per month and beyond usually. What I find is that a lot of the brothers, especially brothers, by the way, because mashallah, the sisters for some reason tend to be a lot more committed to their visions than some of the brothers. But what I found is that they give up very quickly. And I had a brother tell me that the main reason he gave up was because he didn't think entrepreneurship was for him. I was like, what do you mean it's not for you? He's like, I've never really been an entrepreneur. I've always been somebody who, I was really excited to go into work like this. I was really excited to do this. I was really excited to do that. And I was thinking to myself, I was like, this guy has watched all my videos and he knows a lot of the things. And he knows for a fact that he gets to decide what his intentions and motivations are. He gets to decide what motivates him, what makes him happy, what makes him sad, based on his identity, based on his beliefs. And when he didn't tell me that, I was like, okay, do you know what? This guy has an identity issue, which is why he never made the amount of money he wanted to make. Because he didn't identify as an entrepreneur, which I went through it, by the way. When I didn't identify myself as an entrepreneur, I saw myself as someone who would give up on entrepreneurship. I thought to myself, do you know what? Fedi, you've never really been much of an entrepreneur. You've always been someone who enjoys speaking to people, but you know what? You might as well just go and do something else now. Maybe just go get that job you said you wanted to get. Go get that university degree you said you wanted to get. Go do this, this, and that had nothing to do with entrepreneurship. And if I was honest with myself, because I didn't identify as an entrepreneur, I was scared. I was uncomfortable. Like I said, I got cognitive dissonance. What can I tell you now for you to remember for the rest of your life, inshallah, for you to remember forever, I hope. I hope this video is something that can be useful for you forever. Let me quickly fix my whiteboard. There you go. I need to know this one thing. That if you keep looking backwards in your life, you will always repeat the life that you lived yesterday. Therefore, your goal is to always look forward. But most importantly, is to never attach yourself to anything. The only thing you should attach yourself to is trying to become the person who can achieve the goal. Because you want to sacrifice this old self. You want this old self to die. You want this old self to die for the sake of this new self that can achieve so much more. This new self who's going to become a better Muslim. This new self who's going to become a wealthy entrepreneur. This new self that's going to take care of their family. You have to be this new self. You always have to sacrifice your old self for your new self. But what I want you to do is define who you want to become. Define who you want to become. Once you've defined who you want to become, I want you to tell me what actions this person would take. So you've defined the person, now you define their actions. Next, I want you to assume that identity. But once you start assuming that identity, I want you to just act. You might say, well, Fedi, I don't actually have everything figured out, so what do I do? Just act. Try and figure things out in the process. Maybe you don't know how to outreach yet. Try and figure out how to outreach. Maybe you don't know what business model to do. Try and figure out what business model to do. It's absolutely fine. Just assume, act, and then in that action part, you associate that action with your identity being true. I struggled for such a long time to make a sizable amount of income with my business. And the reason for that was because I was the one who was holding myself back. I couldn't blame anything else. In fact, I think Allah has always graced me with so much mercy. Allah has always graced me with so much gifts and so much more than I could ever expect. And alhamdulillah, I don't think any of my success comes to me necessarily. But in terms of the actions I've been able to take and the rewards, of course, Allah is the one who decides the rewards that I get. A big part of it comes to my identity. And as you can see, I identify as someone who is always trying to make something perfect, where it takes me ages to get rid of all these creases and all of this stuff. Anyways, I don't want you to ever look back. No matter how long it's taken you to achieve the goals that you want to achieve, no matter how long it's taken you to get to where you are today, just keep looking forward. Keep looking forward. Because you'll be surprised by, one, how merciful Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is, but number two, what you're capable of achieving. Right? Bi'idhnillah, what you're capable of achieving. It's amazing. So don't give up. Keep looking forward. And before I end the video, if you're a Muslim entrepreneur or business owner and you want to make 10K per month in a halal way and be able to get your time back, inshallah, so you can spend as much time worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, And feel free to join the free school community that I've got in the link in the description. Inshallah, I'll see you in there. I get to speak to you, get a little onboarding call with me and my team so we can all meet you and everything like that. But anyways, if that's your goal, feel free to join. If not, no worries at all. Lovely having you here. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Take care of yourself.